Welcome back to another exciting episode of Vkind Connects. I'm your host, Shabnam Islam. And today we have one of my absolute favorite people, the diversely talented and incredibly brilliant Klaus Mitchell. Now, Klaus is most notably known for as the founder and the co-director of Plant-Based News, which he launched in 2015, and now 7 years later has over 1.2 million followers on IG, 676,000 followers on Facebook, and over 550,000 followers on YouTube. But what you may not know about Klaus is that he is an actual genius with a bachelor's degree in human biosciences and a master's in the genetics of human diseases. My brain just explodes saying that. So, all the way from across the pond, we welcome you. Welcome to the show, Klaus. Thanks for joining us.
It's really, really great to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about the conversation.
So, let's dive right into it. No one's journey into veganism is straight as an arrow, and yours is actually pretty quite story worthy. So, would you mind sharing with our viewers a little bit about how a debilitating physical injury, a South American bike tour, and a world renowned book kind of changed your life?
Yeah, sure. So when you put it like that I guess when you put it like that, I guess it sounds extreme, but it started a few years ago in 2010, I believe. I had a leg injury at that time, and I decided to go to South America to do a bit of a bike tour, which sounds contradictory because most people think, cycling with a bad leg, how are you going to do that? But it was at this kind of complicated um, injury, but I knew that it was going to get worse, and I just wanted to explore what I could do with my body. So I, on my own, went to South America with my bike in a tent and camped along the way. It was way more boring than I thought it would be. It took 5 months, but eventually I got to the top of South America, and there was like one rule: you just got to go in one direction. The sea's got to be on your left, and in 5 months' time, you make it to the top.
Wow.
Before that journey, a day before, I got a book called The China Study because I knew that I was going to be doing human biology for my degree starting after the trip. And I read it in like 2 days. It was incredible. It was about how the longest lived cultures historically consumed a predominantly plant-based diet. And I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe you could not only prevent, but also reverse the progression of our biggest killers in society. Killers that have affected my own personal family, probably affected yours as well. Things like high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart disease. And I was like, wow, you can reverse the progression of these diseases. And it's the same pattern, it's the same diet, it's the same intervention, if you will. So I did it myself and I felt amazing. However, doing it in South America is kind of difficult. So I tiptoed into it. I was more of a reducitarian. And, around that time, I don't know about you, but there's just not much information. Like there was the China
Right.
study, there was Earthlings, but that was about it, right? And so it was a real challenge finding the confidence to do this. And this just showed the power of the misinformation out there because even though I'd read this book several times and I was super passionate about it, I remember getting to university and then occasionally like going for an egg once a day because, just to make sure you get enough protein. I knew the plant-based thing was a thing, but I was like, just to safeguard, just to make sure, which is crazy, right? Because there's so many studies that it goes through in that book. It's like thousands of studies. Why on earth did I think that you need an egg a day for protein? It's absolutely insane. But anyway, I kind of came to understanding that my body didn't need animal products. I slowly cut them out, and by 2013, I just felt really, really good. And concurrently, my leg was really, really hurting because I had something called factor V Leiden. I was suffering from a DVT, basically.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's really bothering me. I had to elevate my leg. I don't know, obviously you're a doctor, so you know about DVTs, but the post thrombotic syndrome that I experienced was so bad that I actually had to elevate my leg, sometimes in the middle of the night. So my bed, for most people's like that, and mine was slightly raised. So my
Hmm.
legs were, elevated, but even that wasn't enough. And sometimes I remember waking up in the night and elevating my leg for 10 minutes before being able to go back to sleep. And this whole circus of being able to cycle somewhere, and then people not realizing about the medical condition I had because, like, hey, here's this fit dude, he talks about diet, he cycled to this social, he cycled to this event. And so I was bottling up inside and I felt really, really lonely because, like, I couldn't sit anywhere or stand anywhere for more than an hour or two, yeah, I was quite an active person. And when you're like 21 years old, you don't want to speak up, you don't want to speak to friends, you're confused, you've got your whole
Hmm.
career in front of you, so there's a lot of uncertainty. And I just remember uh, thinking I've got to do something that isn't about me, because I'm thinking about my leg the whole time. This is not sustainable. And then I donated to, do you know the charity PCRM?
No, I don't.
So
Peace
Physicians
R
Committee for Responsible Medicine. It's founded by
Peace
Dr. Mogul.
RN or Peace RM?
PCRM, so the Physicians Committee for
PCRM. Yes, yes,
Responsible.
yes, yes, yes. Physicians Committee.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So I was really inspired by them, right? And I thought, it's not about me. Like, I'm in my own head. My leg's really hurting. I'm just like, I need to donate. So I donated to that charity because I was really passionate about plant-based nutrition, as I said. I felt really good. And then I realized this is not sustainable. I don't have the money to keep donating to feel good. So I thought, why don't I just create my own little corner of the internet called Plant-Based News, where I could just vlog every weekend. And then I started it when I was doing a master's in the genetics of human disease. And every weekend, I go to my greenhouse in my parents' back garden, and I just talk about, Leonardo DiCaprio bringing Cowspiracy to Netflix, for example, or Tesla ditching leather. And I made a bunch of friends, grew a bunch of followers, and yeah, the rest is history.
That's fantastic. And you spoke a little bit about your family because, we all had these familial impacts that kind of gave us these red flags and light bulbs as we were starting to think about transitioning to a plant-based diet. Did your transition into veganism have any direct impact on your family or your close friend circle? If so, how?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when you first go vegan and plant-based, it depends why you go vegan. Like back in the day in sort of like 2012, 2013, when I really got into it, these circles that I was connected to are mainly into it for the animals and for the environment, predominantly for their health, or at least that, they're eating a whole food plant-based diet. They're eating a diet replete with fruits, vegetables, legumes, and grains. And I'd say the hardest thing about being plant-based and being healthy is seeing your friends and family throw away their health whilst claiming that they know what they would need to do to become healthy, which is completely the opposite of what they would need to do. And so it's this kind of sick circus of not only suffering but misinformation. And so not only are you trying to debunk that misinformation, you're also trying to encourage people to just try it. And that is a very tiring process, right? And I remember trying to get my dad to do this. I remember I planted the China study on his desk. I was like, Dad, I know you love reading. Please, can you read it? And I remember checking how many pages he'd read in the first week because I was like so excited. I went into his room and checked how many pages he read. And I saw that he read 20. I was like, oh my God, this is the best feeling ever. So I tried to influence him, but it took a few years. But eventually he went plant-based, lost a bunch of weight, and is
Wow.
feeling great for it.
That's phenomenal. I have not had that kind of experience yet. Both of my parents PhDs in physics from Bangladesh, right? So they come from a culture where they were pretty heavily dependent upon animal products. Um, so it's been nice to see them start to exclude more things over time. So I think for some people it takes more time and patience, but it's really wonderful to watch and see when your closest start to make that transition. And I'm really proud of you for that.
Thanks, especially the older generation, right?
Right.
There's nothing worse than seeing parents decline and suffer from ill health. And you know that a plant-based diet is it's not going to save anybody forever. It's just a diet pattern. It's not something that makes people invincible. But it's just so nice, even seeing them start to slow down, knowing that they'll be a lot slower if they were eating meat, dairy, eggs, and cheese, 2, 3 times a day,
Absolutely.
right?
And I think the common fallacy is to assume that plant-based diets only help with the prevention of preventable diseases such as cancer and obesity related diseases. However, there's a plethora amount of evidence that shows there's a relationship between eating plant-based diets and having less less risk of obtaining things like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's. There's a
Mm.
correlative value there, and so we can really make a difference for the older generation. And I think it really does start with education. So you're doing a good job.
Yeah, my grandmother suffered from Parkinson's. I never really made the connection between the two. I'm not familiar with that much data showing there's a correlation between plant-based patterns eating and the avoidance of Parkinson's. But I guess, the longest lived cultures historically probably don't suffer from Parkinson's. So I guess there is a link there. And hey, like if a plant-based diet helps type 2 diabetes, if it keeps your blood pressure regulated and your blood sugar, and keeps cholesterol at bay and all these other things, then it's no surprise that it also helps brain health. And what kind of disease would you say Parkinson's is? My mind fades.
Well, we do have a major cognitive dysfunction. The classification of it, I don't know per se. It's a little bit out of my scope of practice.
Neurodegenerative disease, maybe. Yeah.
Definitely a massive degenerative disease. I do have a couple of really cool studies that I'll shoot an email over your way so you can take a read. But I was reading them earlier this week and I found them completely fascinating. And listen, it's just about a reduction of risk, right? It may not be a cure all end all for many things, but if we can put ourselves at lesser risk of these major factors and comorbidities and issues and diseases, then that's exactly what we should be doing with our diet. But let's go
Completely
back
agree.
into your educational pursuits, because you were talking about how you eventually became vegan by the time you were pursuing your master's in and genetics of human disease, which is absolutely fascinating. But the thing I love about you, Klaus, is that you are actually a published author. So for those of you that don't know, Klaus co-authored a study which hypothesized that diets containing high nitrate vegetables would increase plasma nitrate and nitrate concentrations and thereby reduce blood pressure in healthy women. Now, the results of your study actually suggest that the consumption of high nitrate vegetables over 7 days reduces blood pressure in normotensive women. Why is this so important?
I mean, I guess my main takeaway, right, is not just that a plant-based diet is good, specifically vegetables in this instance, and that they lower blood pressure because of the nitrates go to nitrites, then the nitric oxide in the bloodstream, which then vasodilates the circulation, and everybody feels better and is healthier. But like, we already knew this. We don't need another study, as great as it is to be able to say unpublished in the journal Public Health Nutrition. Like, why on earth is our system set up to encourage people like me, passionate people that are putting they're all into, my degree at the time. Like, why on earth do we need more studies showing that vegetables are really good for blood pressure, any index of health? It doesn't make any sense. And so that was like my one takeaway, because I'd read the China study when I was doing it, and I was thinking, like, what on earth is the point in doing this? It's such an obvious connection. Like, I should be exploring things that we don't know. But I guess there was a slight hole in the literature, and that's what I was trying to explore. And then after I did the degree, I found out about Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who has shown that you can reverse the progression of heart disease in a plant-based diet. And he talks about, the nitrates in greens and beetroot. And yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, this is what I did in my degree. So there's some common knowledge there. There's some synergies that I could explore with him when I met, and that's great to actually have a background in this.
Absolutely. And the fascinating thing is my background is more in physical activity and nutrition. So when we talk about the importance of physical activity, we know that there is chronic evidence that engaging in chronic physical activity reduces blood pressure in hypertensive patients. However, it doesn't really have much of an effect on normotensive um, patients. So really, let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. It's a fascinating thing that exercise, yes, it's there, it's wonderful, but if you really want to change the structure, if you really want to impact the system, start eating plant-based meals. And what I really loved about your study is that you had said something about by reducing blood pressure about 5 millimeters of mercury could result in a reduction of stroke death in the UK by approximately 23%. And as we talk about strokes, heart attacks, these things are really, hopefully, majorly preventable unless you have some genetic issue.
I agree. I think in this community, we're always looking at the amazing weight loss transformations or the disease
Mhm.
reversal. But actually, what we have to maybe consider a bit more is the incremental, the small yet significant, statistically significant but small, but across a wide population, then these are massive in terms of, economic costs and healthcare procedures and things like that. And so we need to bear that in mind, because not everybody's going to go plant-based overnight. People are just going to make steps towards becoming more plant-based. So we need to remember that even if they cut out, one meat or processed based meal a week, that's going to have a massive implication if that's done, across the board in a widespread way.
Right. And you do say that in a widespread way because it's not just health. Let's actually talk about a little bit about unsustainable agricultural intensification, right? Climate change. What are we doing to our world? And this is a little tidbit. Klaus and I met at the Vegan Women's Summit in Los Angeles in 2022 this year, and then we had a lunch at our friend Elizabeth Alfano's house, where we really got a chance to like rub elbows and spill the tea a bit. And there was a question that Elizabeth asked, at the end to win a Eat V shirt, remember? And she said 83% of the world's farmland provides, and both Klaus and I are like, 18% of the world's calories. I won the shirt because I said it first. So he was just being very nice, friendly, competitor, I think. Thank you. I don't think you could have fit in the shirt, Klaus. It was definitely made for a woman. But how does this impact really the UK? So according to the United Kingdom Food Security Report in 2021, approximately 71% of UK land area is used for agricultural production, with the majority being allocated to grazing, not actual crop production. So when I look at this, a 2019 report published by doctors Harwood and Hayek from Harvard's Animal Law and Policy program, the United Kingdom is currently not on track to meet its legally binding commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050 under the UK Climate Change Act. So what's happening over there? Are there any substantial legislative changes being made in the UK to transition away from animal agriculture or to reduce the impact of climate change?
It's a really, really interesting question. So yeah, the statistic that we talked about of the 80% of farmland is producing just 18% of calories, that is worldwide. I believe in Western countries, so North America, Europe, and Australasia. However, that was actually published in the United Kingdom. So the issues we're facing here are similar to over in North America because it's a symptom of the same system, which is basically using animals as a mode of production, which is insanely inefficient. It requires so much water, energy, and land. There's so many studies and statistics out there on this, but I think the one that really stands out the most to me is the feed to meat conversion ratio of animals. Whatever animal you look at is just super inefficient. So cows, for example, require 25 calories of feed to produce just 1 calorie of beef. And even the most efficient animal, chicken, requires 4.5 calories of feed to produce just 1 calorie of food. So it doesn't matter whether it's in Australia, United States, or the UK, it's the same problem. We need to move away from this system of production. And we are doing that with things like, alternative proteins. When I set up Plant-Based News in 2015 and then partnered with Robbie and incorporated as a company and then scaled up, which has been an amazing experience, I used to think I could literally levitate on a plant-based diet. It felt so good. I thought the world would go vegan, would go plant-based because they're going to feel so good and they're going to be inspired, and this awareness is going to create ripple effects and the world is going to go vegan, right? And we're all going to feel amazing. Through Plant-Based News and the people that I've met and the entrepreneurs and tech giants that have kind of fed me information through looking on Google and looking in the studies that have been released, I kind of come to learn that actually it's going to be alternative protein that I think will save the day. Because as much as we're passionate about plant-based diets, specifically whole food plant-based diets, is not where society's at. It's the same in your country, right? People are just waiting and expecting and relying on their next paycheck. They don't have the bandwidth to be thinking about changing their diets completely. That's insane. 3 times a day for these people, they rely on animal protein, which has become an addiction to get their sustenance, to get their craving, to get their little bit of pleasure that they need in the day. And so what I think we need is more business to business disruptions. However, the elephant in the room at the moment is the way the governments are set up. You look at the ESG space, there's so much appetite for investing into alternative protein and changing the food system, but because the government's not got any schemes, not got any loans, really not set up for this, there's no underlying asset, which is what they call it in the financial world. And so there's no real incentive for this to be part of the ESG conversation. And so I would say, when you ask me what are the governments doing, what's it over like here, what is it like over here, it's the same as over there. There's just not much happening. And I think until that happens, we're not really going to see a big change in the adoption of a plant-based or animal-free food system.
And so, do you really think that capitalizing veganism is the way to start shifting the norm? Capitalize veganism, and I believe you said something in the Vegan 2022 film that you directed. By the way, if you guys haven't watched any of Klaus's directed vegan films, it starts from Vegan 2015 all the way up now to Vegan 2022. They're mind-blowing, they're fantastic. He has wonderful speakers, movers and shakers in there, and it really just is quite eye-opening. But in Vegan 2020, you actually talk about, I'm sorry, Vegan 2022, you actually talk about how there's a need for breaking the cognitive dissonance, right? But you really kind of touch upon about like technology coming to the forefront and how the perspective on cell-based meat could be a true solution to the climate and animal rights issue that we are facing. Can you elaborate more a little bit here?
I agree. I think you need to meet people where they're at, and you need to view this as not just a personal habit, not just a diet, but a mode of production. And in the same way, uh, writing required a pen and paper before the computer. In the same way, transport required horses before the engine. We just got to see this as just like making society more efficient, because we got an amazing capacity as a society to innovate and not limit ourselves to the constraints of the past. And so I think this is not going to be about kale smoothies or uh, salads. This is going to be about just making the food system more sustainable. And cultivated meat might be part of that. According to The Economist magazine, 60% of the meat market will be made up of alternative protein by 2040. That's amazing,
Wow.
right? That means that in less than
Wow.
20 years, only 40% will be conventional slaughter-based meat. Of that 60%, 35% of that is predicted to be from cultivated meat, the rest from plant-based meat. So there's room for both, right? And there's also another technology called precision fermentation, specifically precision fermented dairy, which I think could completely change the rules of the game. And potentially you might be in a situation where people will shift away from animal agriculture without even realizing, because the taste and texture will be the same, but the mode of production will be different.
Do you ever think there will be a way for us to actually eliminate animal agriculture, or because we're moving towards like a cell-based production, we'll still need the DNA from these animals, and there will be people that still want to raise and rear animals for slaughter? You think we're ever going to get away from that?
I think certainly in a lifetime, of course, there's still going to be communities of fishermen and women and hunters and, sorry, I need to sneeze. One
That's
sec.
okay.
Can Laura hear us? Or are you just kind of, okay, cool, yeah, you're just choosing some meat, right?
Yeah.
Cool, got it. So yeah, I think in our lifetime, we're definitely going to, so I think in our lifetime, we're still definitely going to see fishermen, hunters, and people that farm animals, perhaps even out of necessity. But that's not what we're talking about here. What I'm talking
Absolutely.
about is, shifting away from systematically breeding billions of animals into existence, because 99% of people, at least 100% of people I know, they're not hunting, they're not killing their own food. They're just blindly going to the supermarket, picking a shiny, superfluous packaged product on the supermarket shelf and then eating. They don't really realize what goes into that. And I think those kind of industries are going to change, where there's an industry and there's a business, and it's not just like somebody fishing once a year. That's where we're going to see the massive change. It's obviously going to be a journey, but it always seems impossible until it's done, right?
That's true. So let's talk about these journeys and these ventures, right? What specific partnerships and collaborative efforts have had the greatest impact on plant based news and on yourself over the last few years?
So we raised two investment rounds, one in 2017 and another one in 2021. And since 2021, plant has definitely grown massively. But before that, it was just 4 or 5 people. It was myself and Robbie as the founders, and then just a small editorial and social media team. And unlike all of these other food companies where they've got a product and they can sell lots of products and generate lots of revenue, we've had to do it on a shoestring basically. But it shows the power of social media. If you can get into the algorithm, then the reach and the views take care of themselves, really. So I guess my advice, not that you've asked me for advice, but like just thinking about it now as I'm talking, is, there's been so many changes in like algorithms and stuff, and we've experienced so many hiccups and things that have done well and then not done well. Don't worry about it too much. Just keep going, keep being persistent. And if you can't get in the front door, go in the back door. You can't get in the back door, go in the side door. Just like keep trying to put out this content, and eventually, like you'll reach a lot of people if you want to set up a media company that's plant-based or vegan. So I would say, yeah, that's kind of the main challenge has been the changing algorithm, but the successes have definitely been the reach, and that's been possible because of the fundraising rounds that we've done, being able to build a team, and yeah, it's been an amazing experience.
So, tell us, how important has KBW Ventures and Veg Capital been to the growth of PBN?
So KBW Ventures came in 2017,
Okay.
and it was a really great experience partnering with them, specifically Prince Khaled.
Khaled.
And then in 2021, yeah, we went on to Cedars, which is an investment platform, and raised investment from Veg Capital as well as a whole range of other investors. And that was an amazing experience as well, and being able to grow the team. And not many people realize, but we're actually setting up a design agency beneath Plant-Based News. People think of Plant-Based News as just a news publishing platform on www.plantbasednews.org, on Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. But actually beneath that, we're an agency, and we provide creative services and performance marketing services and influencer marketing services for lots of brands in this space. And we do campaigns with organizations as well. So there's a lot going on in the week that is not on the platform. It's not on Plant-Based News, but I mean, it's all mission focused. It's all to do with sustainability and, for the most part, veganism.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you're just more than a news platform. But let's talk about news, shall we? With the increasing frequency of fake news entering the mainstream media, right? As legitimate or claiming that they're legitimate sources of information, PBN can actually proudly boast that it has a 100% approval rating from NewsGuard, which vehemently classifies which news sources are reliable and valid. And so that is incredible. I wanted to give you a great congratulations for that. So I want to know a little bit more about this growing PBN team. How did you guys discover your writers, your content creators, your contributors, and determine the legitimacy of their work?
It's a really great question. There's so many instances where in real life events have led to us meeting people that have just been truly amazing, whether that's specifically writers or video editors. And that's one of the main reasons I keep going to these events. So if you're listening to this and you ever see me and think you can add value to what we're doing or want to be part of the conversation, please reach out, because it's where you can really explore synergies with mission aligned people. And if you're not going to these events, like clearly you might not be passionate enough, right? So it's the best recipe for like getting amazing people together to meet. And like in LA, right, when we met, there's just so many amazing people at that event. I met so many awesome, talented people, and it's from events like that. But yeah, we've got a really strong social media team now. We've got a really, really strong editorial team. Our social media team is headed up by a guy called Daryl. It's been an absolute privilege working with him. Our editorial team is headed up by amazingly talented journalist called Jemima. And then we've obviously got a graphic designer and editor, Gerardo, who's amazing as well. And yeah, it's just such a privilege being able to work with so many like-minded people.
That's amazing. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to get involved with plant-based news, reach out. Show them what you have. They're always willing to expand their contents and their context. So please, 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 if you've got something good to say, don't be afraid to share it. It just better be reliable. So, Klaus, tell us, what's your hopes for PBN when it reaches its 10-year anniversary?
I hope we'll still be doing the same thing, just reaching a bunch more people, right? It's all about creating information that then creates awareness, that then encourages change, but also doing it in a way that isn't preachy. Me and Robbie always say, you want to pitch content that even if your typical non-vegan uncle sees it, will be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll consider looking into this a bit more, or wow, I didn't know that about animal agriculture. So we try and position it in a way where it's palatable for non-vegans, but also for vegans, like they need to be updated, right? People want to know the latest facts. They want to know the things that are happening in the world, and then they can share it. And so what we see with our audience is about 60% are predominantly plant-based and the other people aren't. But then beyond that, when something does well, it reaches a whole bunch of new people. And especially the TikTok algorithm, this is nothing like Facebook or Instagram, where you're kind of in your echo chamber. Like with TikTok, it spreads the video to people that just aren't expecting it. So, we've had a great experience recently on TikTok where a video last week got 2.8 million views, and the week before that, one of them got 800,000 views. And it's just such a great
Wonderful.
feeling knowing that a lot of those people seeing it wouldn't have just been, super passionate vegans. They're actually non-vegans or flexitarians that need this message.
And the reason why I love plant-based news so much is because you guys have a way, an air about you that it doesn't come across as arrogant, rude, abrasive. It's inclusive. And I feel like that is pretty hard to do sometimes in the plant-based sphere. Um, eh, Engaging people with information that is in a level cognitive dissonant for them to really gather in their own being. So how have you guys been able to frame your information so positively? Because I very rarely see any um, negative banter under many of the comments. So you're doing some really good work there. How do you guys manage that?
I really appreciate that. Yeah, we try and stay away from like the church fate kind of vegan humor, just
Hmm.
because it's a bit closed off. So I think one of the main things I'd say in response to that is there's a couple of ways, I guess. Number one is when you're talking about an advocacy group calling on the government to change something, rather than framing it as a small bunch of activists trying to get the UK government to ban factory farming, and will never, because it's just a bunch of vegans that aren't going to really change anything at the moment. You frame it as like UK group calls on government to do something, and you just frame it in a way where it gives them credibility and it's factually correct. Like, don't get me wrong, like I don't want to sound like I'm too defeatist. It's just that in the short term,
Right.
when an organization is first set up, they're not going to have a huge impact. They're not going to stop farm and animal subsidies. But if you frame it in a way, in a truthful way, of course, where UK activist group lobby government to, put an end to animal agriculture subsidies, it frames it in a way where people can share it, they're more likely to read it, and they're more likely to give this group credence. So that's one of the first ways we try and make our journalism a bit more credible. I'd say the second way, when I'm kind of communicating with people personally, and me and Robbie both share this view when we're talking publicly, it's like when we're talking about the problem and how bad humanity is, frame it as a we. What we're doing to animals is so bad. What is happening to our planet? And then it makes it inclusive. It doesn't make it like us versus them. And I
Right.
think going back to your typical non-vegan uncle, I think, or auntie, I think those people be more receptive to that message, because this is a problem that most people aren't born vegan. They're raised to eat meat. Eating animal products 3 times a day is just like a normal thing, and they don't even think about it. So let's not point at them as if they are the problem. They're not.
Yeah. And what you guys are doing there is incredibly impactful, incredibly powerful. And that is why you've gained the popularity in mainstream that you have, because it does provide the kind of information and inclusivity that I think we need in the vegan sphere. So thank you so much for that. But let's talk about you. One last question, if you don't mind. What major goals, professional and both personal, would you like to achieve by 2025?
By 2025, I want to be a more balanced person who's more present. And what do I mean by that? I mean, well, the last 5 years, 7 years, in fact, it's been an amazing experience. But sitting on my computer every single day, working a bunch of hours every single day, it's probably not had the best effect on my body. And so just
Mm.
remembering like why you're doing this and the importance of being that example, just remembering that. And also, social media is a terrible place to be if you care about your mental health. And it's
Yeah.
been a huge trade-off for me because I spend so long on it every week, but it's worth it. It's worth what we're doing. However, it's really, really important to be present, right? And if you're on social media the whole time, sometimes it can be easy to not be present. So when your family asks you something and you're just like mindlessly scrolling or trying to finish off something, just like remember how it comes across, like be present in everything you do. And I think ironically, being fitter and healthier and more present will actually help our work. It will help my focus producing documentaries. There's a Vegan 2022, which is a documentary that hopefully you'll put out in a bunch of cinemas and then of course onto YouTube. That is a project I'm starting on next month from August, so continuing that. And then just reaching more people and also creating a sustainable model where plant-based news is advertising services create revenue that then feeds the advocacy. So then it funds the social media teams and the editorial teams so we can keep putting out this, life-saving information which can transform people's health,
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Klaus, for sharing your time, for sharing your insight, and sharing some really delicious golden nuggets that I think we can all take and make it a part of our lifestyle. And that wraps up this episode of Vkind Connects with the brilliant mind that is Klaus Mitchell. And to learn more about plant-based news, make sure to check them out at www.plantbasednews.org. Now, to watch this episode and many more, subscribe to our Vkind Vibes YouTube channel. And to stay connected with us and the vegan community, give us a follow at Vkind app on Instagram and download the Vkind app today.